Dave Talks Comics, Episode 16. Dave Talks Comics is a collection of my thoughts, memories, and musings on comics I've read. But on this episode, I'm going to be talking about cartoons. Dave Talks Comics can be found on the web at davetalkscomics.com. My Twitter handle is Dave Talks Comics, and you can reach me by email at davetalkscomics.com. So on this episode, I'm going to be talking about a number of cartoons. Justice League Unlimited, Batman Brave and the Bold, Adventure Time, Batman Beyond, Avatar The Last Airbender, and maybe a couple others whose names... Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. There might be something else. This is not a spoiler-free podcast. I talk from my notes on these cartoons. I try to do more than just summarize them. I try to give you some idea of how I felt about them and the little things that I noticed about them. But I may spoil some stuff in the process. So if you haven't watched these, well... Okay, it's time for a little cartoon talk. It's been a while since I've talked cartoons. I'm watching 3 cartoons right now. I'm near the end of Season 2 of Adventure Time. And for the most part, I think it's pretty good. I wouldn't say every episode is a home run or a grand slam. But I like the quirky sense of humor, and there's a few episodes that have been really good, especially the ones where Finn has to involve dating. Are pretty good. Like the one where he has to get a lock of a princess's hair, and he tries to force a date on Princess Bubblegum. I thought that one was really funny, how he's like, okay, we've got to eat, we've got to do this, and so he's forcing food into her mouth, and I thought that was really funny. And then there's the episode, which I think was the most recent one I watched, which is the one where he wants to go to the movies, but it's a date night, and so you're supposed to go with somebody, and so I think it's called With Her, or Go With Me, that's what it's called. And he wants to go with Princess Bubblegum, but he can't, she's practicing for some whistling contest or something like that. Anyway, so she turns him down, and he ends up going with Marceline, who is the one who tried to coach him. Her and Jake tried to coach him and gave him completely different advice on how to try to win over Princess Bubblegum. And the funniest scene in that episode was where he finally ends up going to the movie with Marceline, and he sees all these people making out, all these couples making out, and he sees the people on the screen making out. He turns his head and throws up. I thought that was funny. And then there were some other cool episodes, like, the first episode of Season 2, where Marceline's father comes around, and it was actually I thought it was pretty out there for a kid's cartoon, where he's sucking all these creatures' souls out, and I mean, it really left me wondering. I wasn't really sure how it was going to end on the one hand, and on the other hand, I was like, well, they can't go too far with this. I mean, this is a kid's cartoon. So I thought that was one that's really worth watching. And the only other one that I would mention is the one where Finn and Jake break into the Ice King's home while he's away. I can't remember exactly what he's doing, but they find this hidden lair within his place, this hidden room, which has all these daggers, and they become like ice ninjas. And I thought that was really funny and really cool and really inventive the way they did stuff. It's been a little while since I watched it at this point. I can't remember too much about it, but okay, so the other cartoons I'm watching, well, I just started to watch Batman, the Brave and the Bold. And they've got the first season and a half, or the first 39 episodes out of 65, I think, on Netflix. And I'd watched the first episode before. I had forgotten about it. I actually had a memory of it, but I thought it was a JLU episode. But it's basically teams up. The bulk of the episode is a team up of Batman and the Blue Beetle, the new Blue Beetle, Jaime. I'm not sure what his last name is. I know it's not Hernandez. But they end up on another planet, and it's a pretty good episode. It started off a little slow this time. It'd probably been a couple years since I saw it. I probably saw it when it first came out, whenever that was. But I thought it was a really good episode, and it's got a lot of good humorous moments in it. And don't think about it too much. I mean, there's some things in there, like with a lot of these cartoons, that will leave you guessing about, well, wondering, if you try and look at it too logically. Okay, the other cartoon that I'm watching is, and I'm 4 episodes into this one, and that's JLU, Justice League Unlimited. And I've watched Justice League Unlimited before. I watched the whole series when it was first aired on Cartoon Network. And I thought it was a really great series. Although, as I'm discovering, not all the episodes are great. Of the first 4 episodes, I said I liked the first 2, the third and the fourth one. They're okay. The first one was called Initiation, and it kind of introduces the whole idea of Justice League Unlimited as opposed to Justice League. And the idea being that there's a much bigger pool of people who are now part of the Justice League. Although that's kind of funny. Well, hold on. Let me talk about the first episode. So the first episode is basically a team-up of Green Arrow with Supergirl and Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter? I'm not sure if Martian Manhunter's in that one. Let me check. But it's a good episode, and it's kind of neat because, not Martian Manhunter's in it, but he's not one of the ones who teams up on this mission. It's the other one is Captain Atom. Yes, Captain Atom, Green Lantern, Supergirl, and Green Arrow. And I thought it was a really good episode, and I really liked the character interactions between Supergirl and Captain Atom and Green Arrow and Green Lantern. And, of course, this is John Stewart Green Lantern because Hal Jordan doesn't really exist in the Justice League Unlimited series. And so that was a good one. And then the second episode was probably the best, my favorite of the first 4, and that's For the Man Who Has Everything. And that's an adaptation of a comic book. I can't remember the exact issue, but it's I believe a Superman annual from the mid to late 80s, which I believe was written by Alan Moore and drawn by Dave Gibbons, the team that did Watchmen. And I had not read the comic book before I saw it the first time. I did read it a couple years ago, and I kind of like the cartoon a little more. Maybe I should go back and reread the comic book now that I've seen the cartoon again. Maybe I'll appreciate it a little more. I don't know. But I thought the cartoon's really good, and it's Superman's birthday. Batman and Wonder Woman are going to visit him at the Fortress of Solitude, and they arrive there to find him paralyzed with this plant on his chest, which has obviously done something to him. And the plant came out of a box. It was a gift from somebody. They're not sure who. And the plant it paralyzes him, and it causes him to hallucinate and think he's back on Krypton. And then eventually they get the plant off of Superman, and it attaches itself to Batman. Anyway, it's a really good episode. And I think it's a really good story, partly for the character moments and how the plant it feeds off of people's memories and uses their memories against them. And it's really good. Third and fourth episodes, not so great, I thought. The third one has the team becoming little kids, having to become little kids. Although, actually, you know what? They did something similar in Young Justice, now that I think about it. Or no, not, well, kind of similar. But anyway, having to become little kids to deal with Modred. This is Morgan Le Fay's son, and the demon shows up in this. It's okay. I didn't think it was great. It's decent, but it's not one of my favorites. And then the fourth episode is Hawk and Dove, which features the superhero team of Hawk and Dove teaming up with Wonder Woman, and I want to say there's somebody else, but I can't think of who that might be. And it's an okay story. It's not great, and they're the bad guy is Ares, the Greek god, and Hephaestus, his brother, another Greek god, also shows up in it, although he doesn't fight them, but he does provide Ares with this super weapon, which is this kind of robot-like device, which kind of reminds me of the Destroyer from Marvel Comics, which Thor fought. And just in its appearance, and it was also in the first Thor movie, if you've seen that. So it was an okay episode. It didn't really do that much for me. But I did look ahead, and there are some good ones coming up in the first 13. So I'm very happy to see that. So those are the 3 cartoons that I'm watching right now. Oh, well, I did want to say something about Justice League. Justice League was the 2-season series which preceded JLU. And I watched all of season 2 over between, the last 6 months of 2013. And I was still impressed by it, and I was still most impressed by the finale, which was about an hour and 15-minute 3-parter called Star-Crossed, in which Hawkgirl's people, the Thanagarians, come to Earth and are going to destroy the Earth, is what they find out eventually. First, it's just take over the Earth, and then it looks like they're going to destroy the Earth. And she is kind of torn in between the two, because it turns out she's been an advanced spy for the Thanagarians. And then there's these whole trust issues between her and the League, and her and the Thanagarians. And, I mean, it's a really good... It's still my favorite of that first 2 seasons. Of those 2 seasons of Justice League. Batman Beyond. Over the past year or 2, I worked my way through all 3 seasons of Batman Beyond, the TV show, which is, of course, the future Batman. I don't think they ever pinpoint a year that it's supposed to take place, but Bruce Wayne is in it, and he's got to be in his 70s or maybe more, 60s, 70s. Anyway, he's walking with a cane throughout the series. It's a pretty good series, and I certainly like the setup of it. I remember watching some of it when it first aired back in the 90s. I enjoyed it. So at this point, I finished watching it all. I most recently watched the 3rd season. It's probably been a year or 2 since I watched the 1st season. So just looking back at the 3rd season, there's a Royal Flush Gang episode, which I thought was pretty good. There was an episode with Ink, who was one of those characters who's, I think this was at least, she has at least 1 episode in each season, I think. Yes, there was 1 in season 2, and I think there was also 1 in season 1, and I think there was also 1 in season 2. I'm looking through the list of episodes right now. Just based on the titles, I can't figure out which one it would be. And then finally we get an episode with Ra's al Ghul, and there's also an episode with the Justice League of the Future, which is a two-parter called The Call, which features Superman of the future and Big Barda and a few other characters who I don't recognize from the comic books, but who have similar powers. Like I think there's somebody kind of like Aquaman and somebody kind of like the Atom. And that episode in some ways was a bit of a disappointment, but it was kind of neat to see it brought in. And then there's also a storyline which involves Cobra. That's Cobra with a K, which is an organization bent on world domination, I think, kind of like Cobra from G.I. Joe. I'm not too sure. I think it predates Cobra from G.I. Joe. And there's actually two stories with that. One's a two-parter and one isn't. For the most part, I enjoyed it. It's good. Unfortunately, there's still, those episodes where Terry has to deal with a villain who's a teenager who's a classmate of his, and I don't know. Those episodes get a little tiring, and it kind of feels like filler material. But so the other thing that I've watched is the movie, the Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker movie, which I thought was phenomenal. It differs from the TV series in a few ways. It's definitely not a run-of-the-mill Batman Beyond story. It is not Batman Terry dealing with another teenager who's acquired superpowers and doesn't know how to deal with them and has become a villain or has been blackmailed into becoming a villain, etc., etc. It is the one big thing that you'll notice is that the animation in it is so much better than the animation in the TV show. I mean, it's much more crisp, it's much more detailed. It's just it's beautiful. As far as the voice cast goes, most of them are in there. There are a couple. Well, there's one character from the main series from seasons 2 and 3 who is not, and that's Max. She is not in there at all, and I don't know if that's because the voice actress Cree Summer, I believe, did not want to do it, or because they just didn't include her in the story, or what it is. But that was a little disappointing. Other than that, yeah, it's for the most part it's the same voice cast: Will Friedle, Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill as the Joker. One of my favorite sequences in the movie was there's a flashback to Batman's last fight, Bruce Wayne's last fight with the Joker, which was really good. It was beautifully drawn. In fact, all the fights were beautifully choreographed and beautifully drawn, crisp. And this really had some creepy moments to it, and it ended on a very moving moment, I thought, and I don't want to give away too much more than that. But it's to me, it's probably the best part of the movie, but I think there's even once that's over, there's still some excellent stuff in the movie. There are a couple scenes that disappointed me a little bit. In particular, there's one sequence where it seems like Batman is trapped and the Joker has trapped him, and it seems like he can't get out. There's all these lasers firing at him, and then all of a sudden he's out. And it was a little unclear to me how it happened. Maybe I should have rewound it. Excuse me. Maybe I should have rewound it and tried watching it again to get a better understanding of what happened exactly. But but for the most part, those scenes were minimal. There was one or two other things where things just seemed a little too convenient, but sometimes, a few of those I can forgive, especially in a movie as long as this was, and this was around an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes, something like that. So, on the whole, I would say it's not perfect, but I'd say it's damn good. It's definitely worth watching. I thought it was better than just about any episode of the TV show, although, of course, it builds on what was in the TV show. And the other thing that occurs to me is that what I really would like to see at this point now is a movie-length story done, with the same quality of production, where Batman faces off against either the Royal Flush Gang or Inc., who are, a couple of the other, my favorite villains from the TV show. Although I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, this movie is about 10 years old or more, and I think that's, the cast, the animators, people involved in the production have moved on to other things. Batman looks different now. I don't think they've done anything with Batman Beyond since then. So I don't think that's going to come to pass, but that's just, my fantasy. The only other thing I want to say is that I watched this on Amazon streaming. I rented it there, and I think it was just $2 for a 24-hour rental, or I think it was $10 to buy it. And as I understand it, there are two versions of this movie. There is an edited version. There's the original version, and there's an edited version. And if you go to worldsfinestonline.com and go to their page where they talk about Return of the Joker, there is a list of all of the edits that were made to get from the original version to the edited version. And if you're searching for that, probably the best way to search for that is just Google World's Finest Online, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, and it should take you to one of the first hits should be a link directly to that page. Because if you go just to worldsfinestonline.com, it takes a bit of navigation to get to there. So the one on Amazon streaming, I'm pretty sure, based on what I read through in the edits, I'm pretty sure what I saw was the original version. And the original version, there's definitely more violence in it than you'll see in the TV show. And like I said, there's some aspects of it that are pretty creepy and kind of a little horrific, which give it a little more weight. And I appreciate that. So overall, I'd say Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker, excellent, top-notch, definitely worth seeing. Batman Beyond the TV show, I'd probably lean more towards pick and choose which episodes you want to watch. Most of the ones that are about teens really aren't that great, or once you've seen a couple of them, you've seen them all kind of, because they all kind of follow the same formula. Just a few more television shows, cartoons that I've watched in the past 6 months or so. In December, I finished watching the second season of Avatar, The Last Airbender. I thought, for the most part, it was really good. I thought the ending was kind of abrupt. It certainly did not compare to the ending. The first season ended beautifully. I mean, it was a heart-wrenching ending. It was a very moving ending, but at the same time, it was very well done, I thought. The second season, they were throwing too many things up there, and by the time they got to the end, they just didn't have enough time to wrap them all up. And so they did it very quickly. I thought there were some neat things there, but it was just way too fast. I mean, the best stuff in season 2, I thought, was kind of towards the middle. The whole episode where they're in the library and the stuff that followed that. But the very ending of the season, I thought, was kind of disappointing. But I'm still going to watch season 3. I'm just taking a break from it, and I'll probably start it sometime in the spring. Other shows, well, I tried watching, this is a show which I'd heard about and I had not ever tried, and that's Full Metal Alchemist. And so I tried watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which I'm not sure how many episodes it is, but I watched about 4 episodes, and I couldn't get into it. It wasn't my thing. It just didn't do it for me. It's been a little while, a month or two now, since I tried watching an episode. But there just wasn't enough there character-wise. It may be one of those things that takes time to evolve, or it's not till you get 10 or 12 episodes in before you really start to get some of the more interesting things, or maybe there isn't anything that would really appeal to me in there. I'm not sure. But I gave up on it after 4 episodes, and I think that's a fair amount of episodes to give it. And then finally, Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I watched the 2nd season of that, and there was only 2 seasons. For the most part, I'm not crazy about this show. It just doesn't do it for me. I never really cared for, one thing that always grinded at me, or just didn't do it for me, was Captain America's voice. It just, I don't know. It just didn't, he didn't seem to have any character. Not that he's the only character who didn't have any depth. And I think a lot of the characters didn't have much depth. It felt quite often like they were just retelling stories from the comic books, some of which I have read, some of which I have not read. And it just, for the most part, there just wasn't enough in the way of character moments. And there wasn't enough that really pulled at me. I really like stories that delve into people's character, and it felt like a little too much action and a little too much paint by the numbers, and it just didn't do it for me. Yeah. So, Avatar, big thumbs up, but Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and Avengers Earth's Mightiest, I can't say that I'd really strongly recommend either one of them. That's it for this episode, number 16, of Dave Talks Comics. Questions or comments can be sent to me at on Twitter, Dave Talks Comics, or by email, dave@davetalkscomics.com. And of course, this episode and all the previous episodes I've recorded can be found at my website, which is davetalkscomics.com.